Hi, I'm Andy Miocz and you are watching AnewZ. Thank you so much for being with us. Iran has launched ballistic missiles at Israel as its supreme leader vowed to inflict heavy blows in retaliation for Israel's overnight strikes. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard says it has carried out attacks against dozens of targets, military centers, and air bases in Israel. An Israel Defense Forces spokesperson said fewer than 100 missiles were fired in 2 waves from Iran.
Sirens sounded across Israel as explosions hit multiple locations, including Tel Aviv. Iran's state news agency, IRNA, confirmed the strikes, reporting that more than 100 missiles were launched. Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, accused Israel of starting the conflict, warning there will be no hit-and-run attacks without severe consequences.
Life will become bitter for them, without a doubt. They should not think they struck, and it's over. No, they started this and triggered a war. We will not allow them to walk away unscathed from the great crime they have committed.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the goal of Operation Rising Lion is to stop what he calls Iran's nuclear and ballistic missile threat. Israel's Defense Minister Israel Katz said Iran had crossed a red line by targeting civilians, vowing that Tehran will pay a heavy price. People are recommended to be near to the shelters and to stay away from debris. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the goal of Operation Rising Lion is to stop what he calls Iran's nuclear and ballistic missile threat.
Operation Rising Lion. The Islamic regime, which has oppressed you for nearly 50 years, threatens to destroy my country, the State of Israel. The objective of Israel's military operation is to remove this threat, both the nuclear threat and the ballistic missile threat to Israel.
Israel's Defense Minister Israel Katz said Iran had crossed a red line by targeting civilians, vowing that Tehran will pay a heavy price. People are recommended to be near to the shelters and to stay away from debris.
For more on the Iranian missile attack as it happened, we go to Tel Aviv and our Trent Murray.
Well, the Iranians have spent much of Friday warning that a retaliation to Israel was coming, and we have experienced it firsthand here in Tel Aviv. Hundreds of ballistic missiles being fired towards not just Tel Aviv, but right across Israel. The IDF is saying that the Iron Dome air defense system was largely able to intercept most of them, but we are seeing that there does appear to be at least one impact in the downtown area of Tel Aviv. Certainly we heard emergency crews, first responders racing down to that area after that impact was seen, and the shelter-in-place order has now been in place for well over an hour. The Israeli government is stressing to people that while the sirens may not be going off right now, the danger does still remain, and they're asking people not to leave their shelters or their safe rooms until they get the official all clear. Certainly in the skies of Tel Aviv, you could see a number of those missiles incoming, the trails of the rockets through the night sky, but also those Iron Dome air defense batteries activating, firing their interceptor missiles up into the sky and intercepting the warheads high above the streets of Tel Aviv. That loud blast, that kinetic energy of that interception, very, very loud, shaking windows at times. And so right now, I think the question is where to from here. I mean, the Iranians had been saying they would respond to Israel. The Israelis have been saying that if there's an attack on their major population centres, then they will increase the tempo of their own military operations inside Iran. Of course, we continue to see waves of airstrikes there targeting military commanders, air force bases, weapons storage areas, and of course those nuclear research facilities. It does undoubtedly feel like right now the entire Middle East is on edge right now, wondering where all of this leads. It does feel like it will be a critical few hours ahead, not just here in Israel, but right across the region. Trent Murray for AnewZ, Tel Aviv.
Well, political analyst Tom Gross is in Tel Aviv right now. Tom, thank you so much for joining us and for your time. What is happening on the ground right now?
Well, pretty much the entire population of not just Tel Aviv, but most of Israel has spent the last 2, 3, 4 hours inside in safe rooms. Almost every Israeli building by law is required to have a bomb shelter. Israel, as your correspondent says, has managed to shoot down most of the approximately 100 ballistic missiles that the Iranian regime has fired this evening. But some have got through, apparently, and there's also been shrapnel has fallen from Israeli intercepts of these missiles. So around 35 Israelis are reported injured, 2 critically. I'd like to add something quite important. You quoted at the beginning of this bulletin the Iranian Revolutionary Guards claiming they were targeting military targets in Israel. This is simply untrue. The vast majority of targets have been civilian targets. This is quite the opposite to what Israel targeted. Israel very precisely targeted Iranian regime infrastructure, military personnel, and those involved with the Iranian nuclear weapons program. Iran, by contrast, has sporadically fired missiles across Israel, including at towns with large Arab populations like Haifa and Jerusalem. Also, of course, both those cities, particularly Jerusalem, have holy sites, holy not just to Jews and Christians, but also to Muslims. So the Iranian regime, without any regard to life or limb or property or even their own faith, have put mosques and including in Jerusalem, but also their mosques in Jaffa, in Tel Aviv, in Haifa, and so on, at risk. In spite of this, most Israelis are nevertheless very supportive of the Israeli government actions, because we have all Israelis have known, that eventually Iran's nuclear weapons program had to be stopped, and everything else has been tried. Years and years of being stonewalled in negotiation tactics by the Islamic regime, and various other methods, sanctions and so on, have been tried. In the end, everyone has known this night was coming, when Israel, because no one else seems prepared to do it, was going to have to use force to try and set back the Islamic regime's nuclear program. And I just want to add one more thing. No one I know in Israel wishes anyone any harm, or any regular citizen any harm in Iran. Quite the opposite. Most Israelis, like most Iranians, would like to have good relations with each other. The problem is the Islamic regime which seized power in the 1979 revolution and has caused havoc throughout the Middle East, in many countries, Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, Yemen, Gaza, and of course here in Israel, and even worse for the poor, suffering people, particularly the women who are persecuted, in fact, of Iran.
As you so rightly mentioned and remarked, the Revolutionary Guard did say that they were targeting military targets, as did Israel say they're targeting military and nuclear sites. What I wanted to ask you additionally, has the danger passed? What are the Israeli officials saying? Have they given the all clear?
Well, for this evening, this wave, it came in 2 waves of 100 ballistic missiles. It's what's being reported. Apparently, that immediate danger has passed, but almost every day, Iran's ally, the Houthis in Yemen, are sending over missiles at random times. And in fact, one Yemenite Houthi missile hit the West Bank today and severely injured 3 Palestinian children. That, in other words, an Iranian missile hit and injured Palestinian children in the West Bank. So the immediate danger of tonight seems to be over for the time being, but no one thinks this war won't go on for at least a few more days, hopefully no longer. And, Israel has done a lot of damage to the nuclear infrastructure of Iran, but not sufficient or complete. They hit Natanz, which is one of the main uranium enrichment sites, but they have not hit Fordo and Isfahan, the main 2 other sites. And I suspect we may see further action by Israel against the Iranian nuclear infrastructure in the coming hours or days.
Tom, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you.
And now for the Iranian perspective on the retaliatory strikes, we go to Tehran, where our Turaj Shiralilu has the details.
Iran launched its retaliatory attacks against Israel on Friday evening, minutes after Supreme Leader Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Khamenei said the Iranian armed forces will respond powerfully to Israel's attacks and will bring ruin on it. According to official media reports, Iranian forces unleashed a barrage of ballistic missiles toward Israel after Ayatollah Khamenei's televised speech in which he said Israel will not escape from the crimes it committed in attacking Iran. He said, Israel should not think that it has struck Iran and that is the end. They started the war and we will not allow them to escape this great crime unscathed. Earlier on Friday, hours after the massive Israeli attacks on Iranian nuclear and military sites and killing of top-ranking military officials and nuclear scientists, Iran's leader said in a message that Israel shall expect a severe punishment. Iran's foreign ministry, in a letter to the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, said it was Tehran's legitimate right to retaliate, citing Article 51 of the UN Charter. According to official sources, 4 top-ranking generals of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, as well as a number of nuclear scientists were killed in the attacks. A large number of locations in and around the capital, Tehran, plus Iran's Natanz nuclear site in the central province of Isfahan, as well as sites in the western provinces bordering Iraq, were attacked. News media photos and footage on state TV show non-military buildings hit by the attacks and civilian casualties. Turaj Shiralilu, reporting for AnewZ TV, Tehran.
The UN Security Council was in session on an emergency meeting on Iran. The meeting was called by Tehran over Israeli strikes. Members of the council were briefed by the head of the International Atomic Energy Agency, Rafael Grossi, who once again said that nuclear facilities must not, under any circumstances, be under attack.
We thank them for their briefings.
For more on the global diplomatic stage that we witnessed on Israel, we are going to Sao Paulo, where Diogo Castro Silva is waiting for us, political analyst. Diogo, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, the Israeli ambassador at the UN said that his country is acting to prevent its own destruction, while the Iranian ambassador called Israeli attacks barbaric and criminal, saying that 78 people have been killed in the Israeli overnight attacks and more than 320 injured. We have numbers from Israel as well. After these retaliatory attacks, more than 30 people have been injured. In your mind, is there any option here to hit pause, or does this just need to play out?
No, good evening. No, I don't think there is room for pause. I think we are in a escalatory phase. I think people need to understand that now Israel and Iran are at war. This was not a preemptive strike like in 1967 Israel did before the Arab nations attacked it. It was more a preventive attack, which is much more ambiguous in international law, but it's like the Pearl Harbor attack, it's like the invasion of Iraq in 2003. So what does it mean is we have a conflict going on for the foreseeable future where I don't see personally any possibility of a truce in the short term.
Do you expect the United States to get involved either militarily or to stop this tit for tat?
No, I think the United States is more a passenger in this conflict. One must be aware that for quite some time, I think for the last 10 years at least or more, US presidents have been very careful and very stern in advising Israel not to attack Iran. In this case, it's uncertain whether the US did a passive acquiescence or it was totally caught unguarded. In either way, the question is a little bit out of the control of the US right now, and I don't see the US stepping into the conflict in the short term, except for perhaps aiding Israel to shoot down ballistic missiles and so forth, which, by the way, I don't think they did it tonight. So we are a little bit in uncharted territory.
Indeed we are. Diogo, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, Tehran earlier said Israel's overnight strikes that targeted nuclear and military sites and killed top military brass and nuclear scientists are a declaration of war. Local media report that civilians were also among those killed in strikes on residential areas. According to the Israelis, Iran initially retaliated by launching about 100 drones that were later intercepted.
Israel has launched a large-scale military operation against Iran, striking nuclear and military targets. Explosions were reported across Iran early Friday morning, just after 4 o'clock local time. According to the Iranian state media, the headquarters of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps in Tehran was also hit. In a recorded statement, Prime Minister Netanyahu defended the strikes, calling them essential to eliminate what he described as a clear and present danger to Israel's survival.
Moments ago, Israel launched Operation Rising Lion, a targeted military operation to roll back the Iranian threat to Israel's very survival. This operation will continue for as many days as it takes to remove this threat. For decades, the tyrants of Tehran have brazenly, openly called for Israel's destruction. They've backed up their genocidal rhetoric with a program to develop nuclear weapons.
The Israeli military confirmed it carried out dozens of coordinated strikes targeting Iran's uranium enrichment plant at Natanz, ballistic missile factories and Revolutionary Guard sites. Witnesses described blasts rocking the capital Tehran, with air defense systems engaging Israeli missiles over the city. Strikes also damaged residential areas. Iranian outlets say children were among the casualties. The Israeli military says this is the beginning of a prolonged operation and that strikes will continue for as many days as it takes.
צה"ל נערך זמן רב למבצע,
The IDF has prepared for this operation over a long period and is fully capable both in defense and offense. The Chief of Staff is currently commanding the operation and conducting ongoing assessments with commanders both at the front and on the home front. The IDF is ready to continue as needed. The Iranian regime seeks the destruction of the State of Israel. This is an act of necessity in the face of an emerging existential threat.
Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, condemned the assault, calling it a display of Israel's vile nature, and warned that Israel had prepared a bitter fate for itself. A spokesperson for Iran's armed forces said both Israel and the United States would pay a heavy price. Washington has denied any involvement. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio says the United States was not consulted and emphasized that their top priority now is to protect American personnel in the region. The International Atomic Energy Agency later verified a strike on the Natanz facility and says it's monitoring radiation levels in contact with both Iranian authorities and its inspectors. Israel, anticipating retaliation, has declared a state of emergency. Flights were grounded at Tehran's main airport, while Tel Aviv-bound flights were diverted elsewhere.
Iran has confirmed that several of its top military commanders and 6 nuclear scientists were killed in Israeli strikes.
Iran has confirmed the deaths of multiple senior military commanders and nuclear scientists in Israeli strikes carried out on Friday. Among those killed was Hossein Salami, head of the elite Revolutionary Guards Corps, and Mohammad Bagheri, the chief of staff of Iran's armed forces. Both men were key figures in shaping Iran's military doctrine and regional strategy. Among the nuclear scientists killed were Fareydun Abbasi Davani, a former head of Iran's Atomic Energy Organization and parliament member, and Mohammad Mehdi Tehranchi, head of Tehran's Islamic Azad University and a top physicist, and 4 more scientists. In addition, Ali Shamkhani, a senior advisor to Iran's supreme leader and former secretary of the Supreme National Security Council, was critically injured. Iranian state television reported explosions at critical sites, including the Natanz uranium enrichment facility, where extensive damage was confirmed. Israel said it struck dozens of nuclear and military targets to stop Iran from developing atomic weapons, adding that the operation could continue for days. In response, Iran appointed new leadership within hours. Navy Chief Habibullah Sayari will replace Bagheri as Armed Forces Chief, and Interior Minister Ahmad Vahidi will take over command of the Revolutionary Guards.
Following the overnight Israeli strikes, angry Iranians took to the streets of Tehran, demanding retaliation.
Crowds took to the streets of Tehran on Friday, demanding retaliation after Israel launched a series of deadly strikes across Iran. Protesters waved national flags and called for a strong military response. Many saw the strikes as a direct attack not only on Iran's leadership, but on its scientific and national pride.
We want a strong revenge, a crushing revenge, against those responsible, against the people who are truly involved in this matter. God willing, I want a definite and decisive response to be given to the root of this issue.
Negotiations not only do not solve problems, but will actually worsen our troubles. This is just one example, and today, the outcome of these negotiations has become clear.
Negotiations are not in our best interest at all. For years, we've been paying the price for these talks, and they've been nothing but a tool for the other side to extract concessions from us, only to break their own promises and agreements afterwards.
According to AFP, while protests filled key areas of the capital, other parts of Tehran remained quiet. However, tensions remained high as Iran's leaders vowed a forceful and unlimited response.
US President Donald Trump called the overnight Israeli attacks excellent. A bit earlier, he said that he gave Iran a 60-day ultimatum 2 months ago to make a deal, and that today was day 61. Trump also said that they might have a second chance now. In the first social media post following the strikes, he warned that Iran must agree to a nuclear deal before there is nothing left, suggesting Israel's next attacks could be even more brutal. And now we go live to Washington and our Ubay Shabander. Hi Ubay, how's the news of the retaliatory strikes by Iran received in the US? Is there any indication that US will now get involved?
Make a deal before there's nothing left to save. That was President Trump's message to Iran's Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei. And I remember it was President Trump's letter that he had sent to Iran's Supreme Leader urging him to make a deal so that Iran can thrive and so that the United States can have normalized diplomatic relations with Iran, but based on one condition: no nuclear weapons. And now we're seeing the Iranians launching their third wave of ballistic missile strikes against Israel following the decapitation strike of the Israeli wide sweeping airstrikes against Iran's underground nuclear program facilities and a number of key strategic missile and drone sites, as well as strikes against some of Ali Khamenei's most trusted military advisors, including the commander of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps and the Iranian chief of staff of their armed forces, essentially wiping out the top echelons of Iran's strategic military command in one evening. And now we are seeing the Iranian response. We have seen reports that the American Terminal High Altitude Air Defense System, which is stationed in Israel and is designed to counter long-range and intermediate-range ballistic missiles, is active. And the United States is militarily supporting Israel on a defensive posture to shoot down as many of these missiles as possible. We have seen, of course, the State Department Secretary of State Marco Rubio saying that no American military assets were involved in the initial Israeli strike against Iran. But of course, we've seen President Trump provide his full support to the Israeli military response, given the fears that Iran was quickly enriching the uranium to a high enough level that could then be quickly weaponized and outfitted into ballistic missiles. And Iran views that as an existential threat, given that the fact that the Iranian senior leaders have time and time said that they seek the destruction of the Jewish state. What will Washington do next? We are seeing some reports that the Israeli government is planning for a long military campaign that could last weeks, and there may be some efforts to try to bring Washington into this offensive military posture as Israel has struck not only the Natanz nuclear enrichment facility, but is probably also seeking to penetrate the Fordow nuclear facility, which is deep underground. So the Israelis may need American technology and bunker busting bombs that the Israelis don't have in order to achieve that objective, to neutralize the Fordow underground nuclear enrichment site, which lies adjacent to the city of Qom in Iran. Right now, very firm resolve by the Trump administration in backing the Israeli strikes, with President Trump saying that the option for peace is still available, that the Iranian regime can save itself from potential collapse if they go back to the negotiating table. Of course, Steve Witkoff, President Trump's Middle East envoy, was scheduled to sit down with his Iranian counterparts just this weekend. But one day after the 60-day deadline that President Trump sent to the Iranians, these strikes took place. That may offer Washington more leverage to try to pressure the Iranians to either accept a deal, or perhaps they could very well see their top political leadership being eliminated by the Israeli Mossad, which is still operating on the ground in Iran, penetrating deep behind enemy lines, much like the playbook that Israel used with great effect and devastating effect against Iran's proxy militia in Lebanon, Hezbollah. And we are seeing now new reports of more explosions in Tehran, in neighborhoods where senior Iranian political leadership live, as the Iranians are launching their third wave of ballistic missile strikes into Tel Aviv. This is a full-blown war, no doubt about it.
Ubay, thank you so much. Now, a flood of reactions poured in after Israel's overnight strikes on Iran. UN General Secretary and officials around the world urged for maximum restraint.
The world is watching with growing alarm as Israel's strike on Iran sparks fears of a broader regional escalation and renewed calls for restraint from global powers. The US Secretary of State Marco Rubio posted on X, "Tonight, Israel took unilateral action against Iran. We are not involved in strikes against Iran, and our top priority is protecting American forces in the region. Let me be clear, Iran should not target US interests or personnel." The UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres condemned the military escalation by Israel in the Middle East. In a statement through his spokesperson, Guterres said that he was concerned by Israel's actions while talks between Iran and the United States were underway, and asked both sides to show restraint. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer also released a statement urging stability in the region. He said the reports of these strikes were concerning and that the UK urges all parties to step back and reduce tensions urgently. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia strongly condemned what it called Israeli aggressions against Iran and called it a clear violation of international law. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Azerbaijan said they were deeply concerned by the military operation carried out by Israel against Iran. They condemned the escalation of the situation and urged both countries to resolve their differences through dialogue and diplomatic means. And in Armenia, the Foreign Ministry said it was deeply concerning, especially given it was taking place ahead of the next round of negotiations. On a post on X, they added, "We condemn such action and call for an immediate cessation of hostilities." Oman, who is mediating Iran and US nuclear talks, say that they consider this a dangerous, reckless escalation, that it represents a flagrant violation of United Nations Charter, the principles of international law, and that such aggressive and persistent behavior is unacceptable. They add that the Sultanate of Oman holds Israel responsible for this escalation. New Zealand's Prime Minister also reacted to the news.
It's a really unwelcome development in the Middle East. You know, the risk of miscalculation is high. That region does not need any more military action and risk associated with that.
And Australia urged caution during this time.
Australia is alarmed by the escalation between Israel and Iran. This risks further destabilising a region that is already volatile. We call on all parties to refrain from actions and rhetoric that would further exacerbate tensions.
Pakistani Foreign Minister Ishaq Dar posted on X saying he strongly condemned the unjustified Israeli attacks on the Islamic Republic of Iran. He called it a brazen violation of Iran's sovereignty. Pakistan stands in solidarity with the government and people of Iran, he said.
At the center of the Middle East escalation is Iran's nuclear program. As Israel deems it an existential threat for Iran to be nuclear armed, Tehran has always maintained its program is for civilian purposes. The once agreed nuclear deal curbing Iran's nuclear capabilities from 2015 collapsed after Donald Trump withdrew the US from the deal during his first term. Here's what's known of Iran's nuclear program now.
Iran's nuclear program spans a wide geography from underground bunkers to open facilities in key cities. The spotlight often falls on the question, does Iran want nuclear weapons? The US and the UN watchdog IAEA believe Tehran had a covert nuclear weapons program that was halted in 2003. Iran firmly denies this.
Many years on from that withdrawal, which has seen the US impose significant sanctions on the Iranian economy, Iran has escalated by advancing its program significantly. It is certainly very advanced and dangerously close.
Following the 2015 nuclear deal, which offered sanctions relief in return for nuclear limits, progress stalled. When President Trump pulled the US out in 2018, Iran ramped up uranium enrichment. Today, Iran is enriching uranium up to 60%, close to the 90% weapons-grade threshold.
Concretely, we don't have 100% oversight of the program, but intelligence agencies, including U.S. intelligence agencies, recently released that they don't believe Iran has made a decision yet to weaponize its program.
Now let's look at Iran's major nuclear facilities. Natanz, Iran's primary enrichment hub. Located south of Tehran, part of it is buried deep underground. It houses around 16,000 centrifuges, refining uranium up to 5%. But its smaller pilot plant enriches uranium up to 60%. The site has previously suffered sabotage, which Iran blames on Israel. Fordow, hidden inside a mountain near Qom, this site is better shielded from airstrikes. It was once off limits under the 2015 deal. Today, nearly 350 advanced centrifuges enrich uranium here to 60%. Isfahan, home to uranium processing and conversion. It's also where Iran can make uranium metal, a substance used in bomb cores. Isfahan also stores enriched uranium. Kondab, a heavy water reactor with potential plutonium output. Its original core was filled with concrete after the 2015 agreement, but Iran now plans to activate the reactor by 2026. Tehran includes Iran's research reactor, used for scientific purposes. Bushehr, Iran's only functioning nuclear power plant. It uses Russian fuel, which is returned after use, reducing proliferation risks. Despite these developments, Tehran continues to signal that it remains open to negotiation with deep mistrust.
The negotiations may lead to results, or they may not. We're very skeptical of the other side. We don't accept or trust them, but we're optimistic about our own capabilities.
Talks are ongoing, sometimes in back channels.
It lasted about 2.5 hours. It took place in a calm and positive atmosphere.
Meanwhile, the US maintains a clear position.
I think Iran could be a great country as long as it doesn't have nuclear weapons.
Yet Israel's expectations go further, a complete dismantling.
It wants Iran to fully renounce its nuclear program, including the peaceful dimensions of its nuclear program. And that is something that Iran is not likely to do.
Iran sees itself surrounded and threatened, especially after seeing what happened to countries that gave up their nuclear capabilities.
It looks around and sees countries like Iraq or Libya or even Ukraine that have renounced their nuclear programs as having been made vulnerable.
In this geopolitical chess game, both Iran and world powers are weighing the cost of delay.
So there are some interests in a fast timeline, but there are, of course, obstacles in arriving at a quick deal.
But this story doesn't end with diplomacy. In the early hours of June 13th, Israel launched a large-scale military operation, Rising Lion, striking Iran's key nuclear site, including Natanz, and reportedly targeting senior commanders and nuclear scientists. With Iran vowing bitter and painful retaliation, the future of nuclear diplomacy now faces a pivotal crossroads. Will this military escalation derail talks entirely or force a renewed push toward resolution?
Now in the next few minutes, we're bringing you insights of Professors Matthew Bunn of Harvard University and Mohammad Marandi of the University of Tehran on what a broader escalation might bring.
This will make Iran even more determined that it needs to move directly toward producing nuclear weapons. My guess is that it will try to rebuild its program at secret locations. And if I were betting, I think, unfortunately, that the odds of Iran actually having a nuclear bomb in hand 10 years from now are probably higher as a result of this strike rather than lower. I think Iran will be more determined. They'll probably kick out inspectors. They may pull out of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty and then proceed at secret sites.
But the Iranian response will be devastating, and it will be something that the Israeli regime will regret. And hopefully Trump will be sane enough to stay out of it, because we all know that much of the world's oil and gas comes from the Persian Gulf region. And if the bases, U.S. bases, are in countries on the other side of the Persian Gulf, if the United States attacks Iran, those tiny Arab dictatorships will be complicit. And that would bring about a situation in the oil market that will create a collapse in the global economy, including where you are. So I think you should be praying that Trump is sane enough to stay out of this, but Iran will punish the Israeli regime.
Following the developments in Iran, Azerbaijan has dispatched nuclear research specialists to the Astara region near the border between the two countries to measure radiation levels. Our Aytan Shukurova brings the report.
Azerbaijan conducts radiation monitoring in Astara. Following recent events in Iran, specialists from the Nuclear Research Department of the Innovation and Digital Development Agency have been dispatched to the Astara region to measure radiation levels on Azerbaijani territory. The radiation survey in the border area of Astara has already been completed. Experts are currently continuing radiation background checks in other regions of the country.
As the situation escalates in Iran, Azerbaijan is assisting in the evacuation of foreign nationals following official requests from several countries. Among those expected to arrive in Azerbaijan by land are members of Russia's Tchaikovsky Symphony Orchestra and around 90 artists, including renowned director Fyodor Bondarchuk. The evacuations are part of a broader effort to ensure the safety of foreigners as tensions continue to rise in the region. Well, that's all we had for you. Thank you so much for watching and stay tuned to AnewZ.